Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my monthly journal pages. Today we'll be flipping through my February pages and chatting about the journal spreads, techniques, and ephemera I created to connect with my personal tarot practice last month. So in February, I didn't do anything different to the main setup for my tarot journal. I'm still working in my B6 Mr. Darcy from Chic Sparrow. I have my little fox clip on it from Kitlins, and I am still using my Archer and Olive B6 journal. Now, of course, if you haven't seen my tarot journal before, I do have a couple of little things shoved in the pocket, such as readings, spreads, and journal prompts that I'm working through for the year. I did have clip in this little fox patch here just because I found it and I thought it was cute. I have my 2021 Tarot main journal here where I have some yearly spreads, some things, different things set up here, and kind of a list of decks that I want to be working with, and then blank space in the back here for some mid-year check-ins and some end-of-the-year things that I hope to do later on. Then in this little insert here, I have a 5-year deck tracker where I'm just keeping a list of the decks that I'm using month to month and listed by year. So I can look back and see what I use each month throughout the years over the next 5 years and kind of see what I'm actually working with in my collection. So in February, I was working with primarily the Ad Orbita, and that was my focal deck for the month. So everything that I kind of set up in my journal sort of reflected that energy. It was also the main deck that I worked with and the deck that I paired most other decks with. So you'll see that deck reflected a lot in my journals. I really wanted to start my title page on this right-hand page. It's really just an aesthetic thing. I like the way that it lays out, kind of creates a nice break between months in my journal. And so to go along with the sort of space or ad orbita theme that I had going on, I just kind of blacked out this page with some white stars that I traced around. So you'll see in this month, I did a lot of doodle work in this particular, during this particular month, just kind of seemed to fit with the flow of the decks that I was using. So I created a sort of title page where I have the month here. I made a color copy from one of the ad orbita cards, I believe this is Temperance, and just kind of doodled in some of the planet doodles that she has in the deck, kind of mimic the border that we find on the cards. And then I wrote a list of the decks that I worked with throughout the month. So I always have that here that I can go back and reflect on. I do also have it in my 5-year deck tracker as well. So starting the month off, I actually did a spread using the Sacred Mothers and Goddesses Oracle, and the way I've been working with that deck, as I've mentioned in a couple of videos, is to pull the card from the deck first, and then to let that card kind of determine what tarot deck I'm going to use with it. So this was the card that I pulled for the start of February, and for me it just kind of had the feel of the Star Tarot, so I pulled that. And while you won't see that deck reflected in my videos for February, I did use it for this particular reading, as well as pulled it for some mindful readings and things of that nature throughout the month, but it wasn't a core working deck, so I didn't include it in my reflections. So here I used the prompts from the spread that associate with this card in the Sacred Mother's Guidebook and did my spread there. I really didn't know what to do in terms of like the design. I couldn't really figure out what I wanted. So I just stuck some stickers on here that I felt kind of matched a little bit. It was just looking a little bit plain without it. But now that I look at the stickers, I kind of wish I hadn't put them on there because I think it looked a little bit cleaner without them, but that's okay. So moving into the first week of February, I worked with just the Ad Orbita, and you will see that throughout February, I followed a very consistent structure with my readings. It's kind of the setup that really works for me quite well in terms of what I have time for and what kind of readings that I like to do. So every Monday, I do a Monday morning kind of check-in. Like this is the kind of the energy that I want to be tapping into throughout the week. Maybe some things that I need to keep in mind or some things that I need to remember. For this one, I just made a color copy of the cards at 50%. You will see that I used the same title structure for the days for the Monday and Friday readings. And again, that just kind of ties into that sort of ad orbita feel for me. I did add in a bunch of botanicals in terms of stamps and doodles and stickers, which was a lot of fun. So I have here anything that's usually written in a different colored pen is almost always something from a guidebook. It's just a really easy way for me to distinguish between the deck creator's writing and my own. So my reflections would be the ones that are generally in just plain black. So that was my start of the week for February. Also happened to be on the 1st, which is always fun. So every Wednesday I was doing the weekly prompts from the 52 weeks in How to Keep a Tarot Journal. I really like that for Wednesday because it's just a nice kind of break from my week to kind of check in with self. So here was my prompt for the week. I pulled the card. I was working with the Witch's Wisdom for this prompt, for this practice all month long. Reflections from the guidebook and my own reflections. And for this one, just did a sticker and some doodling. This is a vellum piece of just a little vellum square that I got from Quinn Boulay, which was really fun. So here's my Friday layout. And again, you can see lots of doodling in this one. Again, just color copies of my cards. And I tried to mimic kind of the colors and the doodling that I found in the cards just to kind of connect with that energy even more. I loved all the water in the cup, so I just kind of doodled some water, and I did just really short, concise journaling a lot of times for my 3 card pulls. So moving into my seasonal Sunday, these are all prompts that I post on my Instagram every week, every Sunday. Last year I did self-care readings. This year I'm doing seasonal readings. They're still slightly self-care related because that just tends to kind of be how my practice is, but it does tune in more to the seasonal energy, which is fun because that's a big part of my personal practice, so I like incorporating some of that. I have my 3 cards that I pulled for this practice for all my seasonal Sunday readings in February. I was using the Spacious Tarot. It's also a deck that I paired with the Ad Orbita one week, which is really fun. So I have my reflections here. Again, you can see not a lot of real decoration on this page. I'm still kind of in this mindset of keeping things pretty clean, pretty simple. I'm really enjoying the doodling. When we get to the end of the month, you'll see that I did some really fun doodling in here. But I did try to keep it fairly basic, fairly easy to do and easy to use, because sometimes my journals can get a little crazy and they can be really, really time consuming, which is really fun when I have the time to do that. February is a short month. I didn't really have a lot of time for extra journaling because I had a bunch of other things that I was doing. So it was really nice to just kind of do a little bit more simpler spreads. So moving into the next week, I was working with the Ad Orbita and the Sacrobito. Again, you can see just kind of pulling in some elements from the cards. I really love these little flower elements here around the King of Cups. So I pulled that into my layout. I have my reflections, and this was just kind of my takeaway message that really, really called to me. So here we have again my Wednesday prompt, so just my 1 card reading, kind of checking in with self. I was using again the Witch's Wisdom. For this one I did some stamping. Wasn't really thrilled with how it came out. Down here underneath all this washi is actually where I kind of wrote the date, but I didn't like the way it came out. It looked really weird, and so I just covered it up with washi, and I put a little mushroom sticker over here because I just thought that was cute. So moving along, we have Friday. I incorporated some stamping here on this one, kind of trying to mimic what was going on here in the Wheel of Fortune card. When I don't have time to doodle, stamping is fantastic because I still kind of get that, particularly when I use just the black ink, I still kind of get that doodle look without having to actually take the time to doodle. Also really handy if you're not super artistic, you can just throw a stamp in there and it looks like a beautiful doodle in your journal, which I really love. For this one, I tried to incorporate some of the drops from the Hangman, but I was using the color from the Cups card here. So I tried to incorporate elements from all 3 cards into the design and the layout of my page as well. So we have the flowers on either side represented here from this Wheel of Fortune. We have the water drops from the Hanged Man, and the color that we pick up from this Knight of Cups here, you see represented here in this particular marker color, which actually is a pretty close match. So moving along, on Valentine's Day, we have another seasonal Sunday, and I wasn't really thrilled with how this page came out. I kept trying to kind of add things to it, and I didn't really like it. Sometimes less is more, and I probably should have just left well enough alone, but that's okay. So I have my little printout from my post on Instagram, my 3 cards, again using the Spacious Tarot, which I really have enjoyed for the seasonal Sunday readings. They have a really great energy to go along with those. And then my reflections here, and again, just some simple doodling, a little bit of gold pen just to pick up the gold in this washi that I threw down here for whatever reason. It's obviously not covering anything up because I can see through it, but apparently I just felt the need to stick that washi there. So moving into the next week, again, we have Monday, and I was doing my 3-card reading, this time working with the Spacious Tarot and the Ad Orbita. And I just did some doodling here to kind of mimic what was going on in this card. That card really pulled to me the most, so that's the one that I kind of focused on when I was doing my doodling. What's written here in this kind of gray, I think it's actually a silver pen, but is 3 pieces from the guidebooks for each of these cards. So this first section here, and this is something that I like to do when I'm kind of struggling for a message. I did post this on my Facebook group as well, but when I'm kind of struggling to find the message in the cards, when it's a day that I'm like, it's just not clicking for me, I'm just not getting it. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll go to the guidebook for each of the cards, if they're different, decks, and I will pull pieces of each of the write-ups for each of these cards. So for the 10 of Cups, we had crescent waves embrace fuller phases of the moon. And I can tell that's the first part of it because I put a comma there. And then we have the Devil. So it goes on to say, the Devil challenges you to enter a realm of shadows. Again, comma. So now we're moving on to the next card, which is the 9 of Swords. It says, remember that most of these fears never touch ground. So those are three phrases, 3 parts of the messages from the guidebook for each of these cards. But when we put them together, it makes a whole message. So we get crescent waves embrace fuller phases of the moon. The Devil challenges you to enter a realm of shadow. Remember that most of these fears never touch ground. So sometimes this is a really great practice when you're kind of struggling for the message and to understand how these cards work together. Sometimes the guidebook can be a really great resource for that, and just pull pieces that call to you from each of these cards and string them together in one sentence. Now again, it's written in a different color because it's not my actual words, and I really want to distinguish between that for myself when I'm looking at my journals, when I'm looking back at them. So I can remember that this is not my phrasing, this is not my words, these are my words here. And I really like that because I think that's really important when I look back at it. So moving along to the next Wednesday, again, we have another prompt. I pulled from the Witch's Wisdom, and you can see here I doodled while I was kind of thinking about the prompt. Before I did my reflections, I doodled this little tree branch here where I was kind of taking the card in, looking at it, thinking about it in terms of the prompt. This was a little bit that I had pulled from the guidebook, and then my own reflections. Sometimes creating the doodle while I'm thinking about things kind of gives me a little bit of time to reflect on the card before I really dive deep into noting my own reflections. So moving along here on the 19th, again, you'll see that I'm, picking up elements from the card in my doodles, particularly for this one, the 8 of Cups, because I have the mountainscape in the back, and then this kind of trail that leads through here that kind of mimics the trail of the cups. So moving into another seasonal Sunday here, we have my prompt. I was feeling the need to put something more. I was feeling the need to kind of paper craft a little bit. So I just put a little bit of craft paper behind this. My message is here. And then I don't know what I was doing here with this text. I was kind of trying to make it flow together because we have melting, released, and flow. Didn't really work out as well as I was hoping it was going to. It's one of those things where it kind of looked better in my mind's eye than it actually did on paper, but that's okay. So moving along to the last week of February, again, really short month. This was where kind of my doodling really is my favorite for the month. This particular page is one of my favorites. I just love the way the doodle incorporates the energy of the card really succinctly because I copied it basically, right? I pulled my Begin Forever card, my 2 cards from the Ad Orbita around it. And before I even laid down my cards, I put my text in here and I doodled this flower. It does go across underneath these cards. And I doodled that on the page. And again, that gives me time to really sit with the cards and to really look at them, to really reflect on the messages in an internal sense before I actually verbalize that message on the page. This is a piece from the guidebook that I just really called to me. And again, another piece from the guidebook. I can tell because they are distinguished from my general writing, which, as you can see, is pretty much, if it's black ink in cursive, those are my reflections. If it's anything else, it's probably a prompt, a title, or something from a guidebook. So then we have our next prompt for Wednesday and the card that I pulled again from the Witch's Wisdom. Here I just did a little doodle kind of mimicking this branch here. I like to pull out pieces in the cards with my doodling. It's just fun, gives me some time to reflect. This is quite a lengthy message from the guidebook, but I really liked what it had to say. And then my own reflections. And I really just kind of wanted to fill the rest of the page with writing to create that sort of visual balance between the craft paper and the question and the writing, which I think is really fun. So moving into our last couple of pages, this is another one of my favorites. I really wish I would have had a marker in this color, but I just couldn't find one that was a good match. So I just used pink and pulled the blue in. My printout came out a little bit dark, but this is kind of the same blue color that we see on the box of the Ad Orbita. And I do quite like the way this page came out as well. I did spend quite a bit of time doodling this flower. I just like the look of this card, and so that's why I pulled that particular element onto the page. Just kind of doodled that in and then made the color copy of my cards. I think for the most part, they're all 50%, scaled down to 50% on my scanner, except for the Witch's Wisdom, which I did at a couple of varying sizes just because I could never remember what I used the week before, so I just kind of guessed. 50, 60, 75, something like that. So here we have a piece from the guidebook. Now, even though it's written in black ink, right, it's written in print and it's atop of some Tombow marker. So again, that tells me that it's not my own writing because it doesn't look like this or this. And so that's just a really easy way for me to distinguish. So I really like the way that that page came out. I think that's definitely one of my favorites, although I do think that this is my favorite page probably from the whole month. I always like to pick a favorite. I don't know why. It's probably like trying to pick your favorite tarot deck, but I do tend to have one or two that I kind of favor more than the other. And here we have our final seasonal Sunday spread. I totally forgot to write the title on it, but I know that that's what it is. And again, just feeling like I needed to add a little bit of paper crafting in there just to add some layer. So I added again some more of that craft paper in there just to create some background. I have my 3 cards and my really succinct reflection down here. This one's pretty simple, but I really like the way that it came out because it feels like it's got enough going on the page, but it's not so overwhelming. So that's it. That's a look at everything that I did in February. I really like the doodling that I got to do this month, again, using the stamp when I didn't have time to doodle. And it was really fun. I tried to keep things pretty simple, pretty, a little bit more on the minimalist side, again, just because that kind of fits for me for the season that we're in. And I tend to start the year off in more of a minimalistic sense. As we move along through the year, it'll probably get, I don't want to say busier, but it'll probably get busier because I'll probably at some point get back to a little bit more paper crafting, maybe adding in some fabrics and things of that nature. But I definitely noticed that my journaling does kind of tend to flow with the seasonal energy. For the first few months, I tend to go pretty minimalistic, more of the doodling, more black and whites, which I really like at this particular time of year. But it was a fun month in my journal and I really enjoyed it. So there we have it, another month completed in my 2021 tarot journal. If you'd like to find out more about any of the decks I used this last month, check out my February reflections video. Thank you for joining me today. You'll find links for everything featured here in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.